Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, and not the other genders. You're not welcome. This is the Commander Culture Show. We are here with Templar. We are here with Miss Cherie. We are all back after a long hiatus. Unfortunately, Koof enforced it was stalking through the family, so we had to take a short break. But we are very glad to be back with you guys, continuing to talk about the 5 steps to rebuilding the world as we want it to be, and know that it should be a world that is controlled and dominated by the good, the beautiful, and the true. This is what Commander Culture, Ms. Cherie, and Templar are all fighting for. Today we are on step 3, acceleration. You can go back in the channel and you can watch some of our other long-winded but fun and engaging discussions. There's been a lot going on in the world since we last talked. There has been the truckers rally, which we will mention in detail, as much detail as we can today. There was also been some events and late unpleasantness in the eastern part of Eastern Europe, and that may come into play a little bit, but that's something that you should be watching this channel for. I'm planning on doing an exclusive video where I explain my thoughts on the matter and where this all came from and where it might be going to. Templar, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me as always. It's great to be back, and it's kind of convenient that we're talking about this step at this time. It's almost as if we're following, along with real life here, because it seems like we're kind of currently at this stage, this acceleration stage, and it kind of raises the question of like acceleration towards what, and the answer is chaos. But with the things going, and some people might be like, oh, but the world's crazy, we're at chaos right now. I promise you, we're not at chaos right now. Things can get way worse, and they probably will. But we're going to basically lead you by the hand through how you can make that work in your favor and produce the outcome that you want, which, as Commander Culture already alluded to, was rebuilding the West. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this one because I think it's particularly relevant, especially given current events.
It is. Yes, it's almost like we planned it this way. Maybe Commander Culture has more power in the world than one would think for a mere YouTuber. Miss Cherie, welcome to the program. We're always glad to have you here. What say you?
Thank you. I'm always happy to be here. And I just have to say, hope for the best, prepare for the worst.
That's exactly right. Those are excellent words to live by. And that's pretty much what we do here at the Commander Culture channel. And that's what we encourage you guys to do, because the best, we know what the best looks like. All we have to do is open a book and look at the 1950s, the 1910s, the 1880s, the 1850s, and we can see a very, very good world, a very, very stable world that was brought to you by Northern Europe. And we hope that that world will one day emerge from the chaos and mess that we currently see ourselves in. As Templar said, it will get worse. We can see that a week ago, although, and people who have followed the channel here and the broadcasting that I've been doing, especially with Mr. Brown over there in merry old England, know that I've been talking about the looming war clouds. And not that anyone has disbelieved me here, but probably a lot of people out there know folks who are completely taken by surprise. Oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine something like this would happen. And I was reminded by a friend that I was talking about this stuff. I had literally predicted this exact chain of events that we're seeing unfold in Ukraine in 2014. Now, how could I possibly have done that unless I was a clairvoyant, which I'm not? All I am is well-read in history, as is Cherie, as is Templar, as are many of you guys. And so we weren't really taken by surprise. And that's the key to all of this. As the world slides down into an abyss, we have ourselves a handmade parachute. And that is what we're talking about today, and how to pass out more parachutes to other people. Because there is a bottom to that abyss, and we all want to get there together.
And the key is to not just not be taken by surprise, but even just be prepared for the things that we can probably safely assume that are coming. And oftentimes these aren't things that we are telling you are coming. These are things that we are listening to, the quote unquote world leaders or the world elites. We listen to what they say is coming and we go, that's probably coming. And then we turn around and go, hey guys, by the way, these people who have a lot of influence and have their desired end state, they say that these things are coming. We should probably believe it when they say that.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's all that it is. It's for example, you take Russia at their word when they say, "Please don't expand NATO any further, or we may be forced to take drastic action." You have two choices. It's like a choose your own adventure. You can go, "Ha ha ha! Look at those stupid people in their bear hats," or you can say, "Oh, gee, they sound pretty serious. I guess I won't expand NATO anymore." Choose your own adventure, right? And so there's always these sort of paths that you can go down. I really like what you said there about surprise, and it sort of ties in. One of the in history, one of my favorite unit names is exclusive to the Russians. They have a military unit called Shock, like a shock corps or a shock division, and it's meant for basically the Russian equivalent of Blitzkrieg. And as you might be able to attest to, Templar, one of the most important elements on a battlefield is morale. And if the enemy or you as a defender is shocked by what's coming at you, you're much less likely to effectively resist. If you know that that a battle is coming, if you're prepared for that battle, if you're prepared for that eventuality that's heading its way at however many thousands of feet per second, then you are prepared and your morale is less likely to break and you're more likely to be successful, repel an attack, whatever it is. So it's not just being surprised is uncomfortable. Being surprised about what's going to happen in the world is a key component to you losing that battle and the enemy winning that battle. And this is why, when everyone is shocked by oil prices going up, everyone is shocked by inflation, everyone is shocked that their dollars doesn't buy what it is, everyone is shocked that Russia has moved into Ukraine, and they get demoralized. And that's actually what I see across social media. Oh, by the way, I'm going to brag, if I can brag a little bit just today. I was followed by a thought leader who I follow pretty closely. I don't agree with everything he says, but Mr. Brett Stevens over at the America with a K blog followed me based on a couple of comments that I made on his Gab site. So I was very pleased with myself. Thank you for allowing me that diversion, because I don't have a lot of followers on Gab, but the ones that I do have are nice quality. So you can go ahead and contribute to that by joining Gab, reading the America blog with Brett Stevens, and finding all the cool stuff that I say on there. So shall we jump into step 3, acceleration?
Yeah, let's do it.
Mhm.
Let's do it. All right. So to quickly go through this, what is acceleration? Templar, you in the pre-chat, you gave a pretty good description. Would you be able to revisit that?
Yeah, so again, it's acceleration towards what, and the answer is chaos, and it's really creating chaos, and that's good for you, because if you followed our advice in the previous segments, then you will have not only insulated yourself on an individual basis, but also your family and your community. You've insulated yourself from dependencies on these sort of infrastructures. Any dependency is also a vulnerability that can be exploited. So you've eliminated your dependencies. You've become more self-sufficient. You no longer rely either as much or at all on things like power grids, water supplies, or grocery stores being fully stocked. So now you have the opportunity to accelerate the chaos that the I guess your betters in government, want to foment as well, but only at their pace. So you basically create chaos among the people who wish to control you, and then you are essentially insulated and immune to all of that. And the end result is you're able to preserve your quality of life, and the people who wish to control you in your life don't have the ability to do that, whether that's not being able to project power out to you, to put you under their thumb, or just not being able to exploit one of your dependencies because you simply don't have any anymore. And so this is all extremely important, because what we've been talking about before this is setting that foundation for the what's to come. And oftentimes, a lot of people, if you're a trucker in Canada, or if you're a protester on January 6th, or if you're part of a group that is now illegal to be a part of in Australia or something like that, what happens is they'll throw you in prison. They'll seize your bank account. They will basically make it impossible for you to engage with society and be a normal person. And these aren't hypotheticals. These are things that are actually happening to people in real life nowadays. And these aren't like actual domestic terrorists or actual white supremacists. These are just normal people who are voicing discontent about, quote unquote, our democracy. And what does our democracy do to them? They're smashing them in the face with jackboots and locking them up in prisons without trials or bail. And so, with all of that in mind and all of that stuff actually happening, what people are quickly realizing is, oh, if I'm a trucker and I'm going to go to Ottawa, I can't rely on a bank to hold my money there and me to be able to access it once if the protest is successful and I walk away from it, am I still going to be able to access my bank account, or even while I'm there? And so, what you need to be doing is the things we've already said. Establishing those secondary means. I know Monero is a big one. There's ways to use crypto. We've talked about all these things. And so you've done all these things. Now you're ready. Now you're ready to accelerate the chaos. So you're ready to get in your truck and you're ready to go to Ottawa, and you're ready to start shutting things down and letting the politicians who believe that they have the right to tell you how to live your life, the honking will continue until freedom improves. You will essentially have the ability to wait them out, as opposed to them basically squeezing you in your pocketbook with inflation, squeezing your comfort by taking things off the shelves through supply shortages, and they just get to kick back and enjoy, their life of comfort while you suffer. Now we get to turn the tables around. You've prepared your life without those things, and now these people are sweating bullets in their ivory towers because their ivory tower is surrounded by a bunch of trucks, and the honking doesn't stop. So that's basically where we've come from. You've insulated yourself from chaos. Now, how do you foment chaos in such a way that allows you to achieve your end state and come out on the other side scot-free?
Very well put. I think a good one-sentence summary for that is the best defense is a good offense, right? And
this is correct. This is where you go from just like trying to retreat and trying to preserve what little scrap of dignity and freedom you have left to, okay, now this is the first offensive tactic that we've started to talk about.
Right now, and I think so. It springs to my mind here because people will say, "Well, accelerationism, what is that?" I've heard of it. It's kind of an obscure sort of, or nebulous concept. And we're going to talk about a few of them today, including what the Canadian truckers are doing. But one that jumps out to me, especially since you mentioned finances, the people that are out there that want you to suffer at the expense, and through that suffering they gain power. They have a timetable. They have a system, right? Accelerationism is about disrupting that system. It's about disrupting that timetable. It's about getting inside of their ODA loop, as we talked about in our first set of the series. And one of the best examples that I can think of recently in that was the Wall Street Bets crew, and the Wall Street Silver, which was a sort of a separate thing. Yeah, it's like, you know what? It doesn't matter if we lose a couple $100 on this goofy GameStop bet. We are going to take down their entire system. That's what accelerationism is all about. It doesn't matter if we lose on the silver price going down $2 or something like that. If we buy all the silver off the market, their financial system collapses. And by the way, I'm a very, very big component of the old school, Max Kaiser, crash JP Morgan, buy silver sort of thing. And every single ounce of silver that you buy is taking that hard money directly out of the system and making it harder for them to work. It's taking grease off of the gears of the system. And that's what accelerationism is about in general. Whatever your area of expertise is, if you're a finance guy, if you're a military guy, if you're a logistics guy like these truckers, and we'll talk about that area of expertise in our last slide. I don't want to get ahead of myself. We're joined here by Mr. Brown, our good friend of the show. We were just talking about you, sir. Hail to Mr. Brown. So shall we jump into our first series of slides here? It's a short series of slides, but there is a lot to talk about in each one. Ms. Cherie, do you have any thoughts in general on accelerationism? I know you've heard the term.
I have heard the term. No, I just have a question, but that can wait till after we're done with the slides.
Oh, no, we want to hear your question up front. I know Mr. Brown does.
Oh, well, I was just going to ask Templar what he thinks is going to happen in the U.S. because they're planning a trucking to the D.C. area.
Yep. I was wondering the exact same thing. And I guess off the top of my head, there's a couple viable scenarios. One of them is they just start targeting people in soft ways. So, a trucker who's part of the convoy, he's rolling down the road and then he realizes, he doesn't have access to his bank account anymore. And he goes, oh crap, I need to go home because my kids don't have food. And so you can kind of strangle this thing in the cradle, stop it before it even starts really and then other people get the message too, we're like, oh, well, I kind of need access to my bank account so I don't jump on board. And that's because they haven't been listening to our podcast and they haven't been insulating themselves from these things. And so they can't just jump on the convoy and expect everything to be all fine. So that's one way that they can end this thing before it even starts. Another way is, maybe it comes to a head prior to getting to DC and they basically isolate, there's a phrase in the military. It's like find, fix, and finish. So they can find whatever groups of truckers they are, isolate those groups and smaller people before they have time to build any mass, and then just basically strategically take out groups of convoys before they get there. And by the time they're done with that, each one has been cleaned up and they've managed to obliterate the whole convoy just in pieces.
Defeat in detail.
Yeah. So that's another scenario. And these sound kind of dismal, but it's more so that's what you plan for, right? You hope for the best, plan for the worst. So like best case scenario, they just roll into DC, but DC has been doing its own hardening. It's got its own walls. It's already activated the National Guard. So what will most likely happen is a combination of those soft efforts to just get people to go home. It could even be as simple as psyops on social media of like, oh, these truckers are racist and anyone who's in the convoy is racist. And then the truckers go, well, I'm going to prove how not racist I am. And they just turn their trucks around to, show the system how not racist they are. And then there you go. They just defeated the trucker convoy. So it's a combination of that from one end with, they might just stop them 5 miles outside of DC, and then everyone's just kind of sitting around looking at each other like, okay, well, we didn't make it to our objective and we're here now, but we're not affecting any change. We can just sit here, and then they just get bored and go home, which I think would probably happen. But our leaders have impressed me in their ability to control people's lives. They've also impressed me on how stupid they are. So maybe they're just going to be like, oh no, these people, they won't call our bluff. They're just going to go home on their own. And then everyone just rolls up to DC and they're like, oh crap, they actually followed through and we are totally not prepared for this. And it's basically like Canada on steroids. And now they actually have to capitulate in some capacity. So yeah, there's a lot of different scenarios how this could end. All I know is that if you are participating in this, it's just like the January 6th people. If you're going to punch the king, you better kill him because, when he gets back up, he's going to have your head. So it's kind of like be prepared for some consequences for your actions. And that's what everyone needs to be aware of.
Can I add some thoughts real quick on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think you're right, but just like the lesson that the sort of grand finale of the Canadian trucker saga, that even if you're not involved in the convoy, and I know we have some people that listen that are truckers, you can fight and win this battle by not doing anything, right? If you sit at home and your rig sits in your driveway and you just refuse to haul for a week or a month or however long you determine that you can, you cripple the system. And the more people that do that, the more likely that the overall effort to raise awareness, as they say, is going to succeed. So even if they manage to defeat this individual convoys in detail, or they manage to sort of stop the movement from going, all the truckers have to do is just turn around, go home, and continue not working. You see what I'm saying? And because the goal is the bringing awareness and attention to the importance of the logistical system in the United States and how it's being manipulated and damaged by the people that are in control. So just walking away. It's that simple. Acceleration by immobility.
Yeah, there's two things I'll say about that real quick, and then we can move on. One of them is if you're trying to strike, you need to have you need to be aware of the scabs, the people who are willing to take your place if you choose to strike. And what they're doing right now is we have no borders. They're letting everyone and their mother and all of their brothers into the country. And so if you're a trucker, or if you're in some kind of position where you say, fine, I'm not going to work anymore, and they go, great, and they replace you with someone who will, except that person is like, Jose, or I don't even know how to, whatever a Haitian person's name would be. And, they can barely drive a truck, but they could just keep the economy afloat with those people. We need to be very wary of that, because it's mostly white people that are experiencing this disenfranchisement in the country, and they cannot rely on this checking out from society and having crippling effects, because society is not going to rely on them for much longer, between automation and the amount of people that they have coming in to replace white people, and the percentage that we hold in the country, like the actual overall piece of the pie that we make up. You're not going to have as good of effects. If you only make up 20% of the country, and you say we're not going to be on the road anymore, we're not going to do any more trucking, that might not bring the country to its knees, and they might just be able to wait you out instead, or just overall replace you. And you see that in like police departments, where they've even sent letters to people saying, hey, we can't let you go because it's people who refuse to get the vaccine. They go, we can't let you go yet because we don't have the manning, but as soon as we have someone to replace you, we're going to. And then at that point, people's ability to basically strike and affect change in that way is all but gone. And so it needs to be coordinated, and it needs to be it needs to be painful enough to force them to capitulate to your demands. But you cannot sit around forever, and really the clock's ticking, because they know this too. They know that if they are dependent on truckers, and these truckers are disgruntled, that is a dependency that the system has on these people that can be exploited by those people. And so the system is highly aware of this, and they are doing everything they can to insulate themselves from that dependency as well. So I would just be wary of that. And I had a second point, but I forgot what it was, and it doesn't matter, because we should move on anyway.
We shall move on here. I just want to highlight this quick comment here from Mr. Brown. He says the Orange Man was anti all of this. The populace voted him out, thinking it would be the opposite of what's going on today. They voted for this. I don't understand the logic, and I'll answer this. I'll answer this real briefly. I think I'll answer it for the panel. But there's two points that I want to make, and the first one is, P.T. Barnum very accurately said that no one ever went broke underestimating the stupidity of the American public. So if you want to look at it that way, the American public really doesn't know what's good for it. We can see that in the COVID crisis. We can see that what's going on in Ukraine. We can see that in every economic crisis. However, the populace did not actually vote Donald Trump out of office. I think that the record will show that Donald Trump actually won re-election, and through a soft coup, kind of like the hard coup that occurred in Ukraine in 2014, which Biden has a hand in, and Trump was impeached trying to investigate that connection. The system saw that Trump was removed rather than him actually being voted out. The majority of people in America, I will go on record as saying, did not want war with anybody and voted for Trump for that reason. They wanted economic prosperity and voted Trump for that reason, as well as a whole bunch of other things. So, yeah, you can never trust the voters, but when they speak loudly enough and they vote somebody like Trump, the system has to remove them. And that's what we saw happen there. Oh, you okay there, Miss Cherie?
I'm sorry. I was hoping I muted that.
Oh, you did not. You did not. We got the whole hack. All right. So I hope no one went deaf there. Entropy for thee, but not for me. What we're seeing here, entropy is something we've talked about before on this channel. Basically, it means that the system falls apart. The center cannot hold, as I get waxing poetic on you guys. And they, meaning the people that are in control, people that are in power, benefit from the entropy of the middle class, the lower class, all of the think about it as like a dehumidifier in a room. The more steam that builds up and sort of spreads out, the more that they can condense into their own little distilled power and money base. And so as that wealth and power leaves the lower class and the middle class and the working class and people like that and accretes to these powerful people, we see entropy. We see the weakening of the middle class. We see the enslavement of the working class. And so accelerationism turns that dynamic completely on its head. If you're going to have, here's the trucker example again. If you're going to have $6 a gallon gasoline and I'm a trucker, well, how about I just don't deliver anything, right? It's cheaper for me to deliver stuff at $3 a gallon, but I can't afford $6 a gallon. So I'm just going to make it $0 a gallon and not deliver. And then the system starts to fall apart, but for the people who created the crisis in the first place, rather than for the truckers themselves, because they are prepared, they are conducting the offense as a form of defense. And that's how I see this entropy for thee and not for me. We do see higher gas prices. We see spiraling up inflation or stagflation, where wages have remained stagnant. Actually, for the last 40 years, wages have remained stagnant compared to inflation. We see a supply crisis where the only thing left on the shelves is the vegetarian meat.
I thought that was pretty funny, which they can make in a factory. It's really convenient when you can basically eliminate the need for farmers and just animals in general, and you could just, cram whatever. It's probably not even actual plants. It's soy plus synthetic
sawdust,
plastic,
plaster,
that they put into a grinder and squeeze out a tube on the other end, and it's very convenient, because if you could just feed this to your population, then you can keep all of the meat for yourself, and you can also make your population low IQ, low testosterone, and effeminate, and low IQ, low testosterone people are no threat to your power. So take all the ground meat off the shelves, throw all that mystery stuff on the shelves, and then
I would say that and we'll get into this a little bit later, I think, in another slide, but low IQ and low testosterone feminized people will actually contribute to your power base because they are motivated primarily by fear rather than by their own action.
And they rely on the community for survival. So they have to keep these people in power in order as a survival mechanism.
At the risk of inflating my own ego, I'm going to throw this comment up here from Mr. Brown again, who I've been vlogging with since the beginning. We go way back, he and I, and one of the first things that we had always talked about was a war happening, and he remembers that. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Somebody gets me. So there goes a little boost to my ego. Thank you very much. But that's not what it's about, because at the same time that we talked about a war being imminent, just the factors had to come together, we also said we didn't want it to happen. And the best thing to happen would be that we were wrong, that a war would happen. But in fact, it has, and we don't know when or how it's going to stop. But I do hope that it stops very, very, very quickly and prevents a greater humanitarian disaster.
So, Commander, I had a question on this specifically. You kind of look at this and you're like, okay, gas prices are high, and the people who are paying for this, are the people who are going to the pumps. Whereas someone might look at this and go, it's the population that's paying the price for these inconveniences, whereas the elites will still get their gasoline because they don't even pay for their gas because they just get chauffeured around, or they'll have their ground meat delivered directly to their door through their little inroads with uh, whatever people in high places that they are friends with. So do you see this as potentially being cutting off your nose to spite your face, sort of thing? Shooting yourself in the foot by creating entropy within your own community while the elites sit back and laugh at your pain.
I don't think so, and you can analyze this sentiment of mine from an economist's perspective, but one of the things that's known about the wealthy, I put in quotes, is that they don't work for their money, and that's not meant to be a slight. That's just meant to be a statement of how they fund their existence. Their funding comes from the I guess you could say effluvium of the system, right? Things like interest, things like rent, things like stock dividends, things like that. That's where they get their money. That it's generational wealth that keeps giving. This kind of entropy is a poison to that tree of wealth. So and we saw this happen in the 1920s, the Great Gatsby era, where it was like all this wealth accumulated from the Victorian era, accumulated from imperialism, accumulated from the height of Western civilization, collapsed, within just a few years because it wasn't constantly being nourished. You can't have this great oak tree in your yard and never give it access to water. As soon as that access to water is cut off, that tree starts to starve, no matter how strong it looks on the outside. And that's what's happening here. The stock prices, as inflation spirals higher, every dividend becomes worth less and less. Think of it this way. I'm sorry to ramble on, but we know that the people who get hit worst by inflation are people on fixed incomes, right? And we think of that as, old Mother Jones or somebody sitting in her rocking chair with a pension, living off of peanuts. But really, the biggest fixed income people in the world are these powerful elites, the Davos set, right? Now, some of those guys, like Bezos and Gates and stuff, might be out of the reach, but their lower minions are definitely not. And so the longer that these people on fixed incomes have to be subjected to a system in which fixed incomes are eroded. And here's a bonus. These people really, really love the smell of their own farts. They just sit there, they can the things, they open them up at parties, and they believe all of their own crap. And so how many of them are going out and buying gold? How many of them are going out and buying crypto? How many of them are going out and actually buying productive farmland or remote island getaways? Not as many as you would think. Some of them are, like Bill Gates. Most of them are not. And so they're not taking the steps to protect themselves from their own consequences. It's like an arsonist in a building lighting a fire all around himself because he's so giddy with the fact that he gets to start a fire. So they are, the nose is being cut off, but it's on our terms more rather than theirs if we can understand this particular dynamic. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I've always thought that richer people have the ability to protect themselves from something like inflation, by buying houses and whatnot. But I guess anyone can.
They can, but they don't. See,
yeah,
because they're that stupid. They
so then
they
is it in
believe their
our
own
interest
propaganda.
to continue? I feel we can move on from this, but sometimes I'm just it's like almost a boomer mentality, or even my dad has said like, well, why would these people be creating worse conditions? And It seems like inflation is such an indiscriminately painful thing. It doesn't matter where you are on the ladder, like you're making the dollar worth less.
Right, but you're making, but see, when you're a rentier class, and I don't mean to get all Marxist on everyone, but like if you're the rentier class and you're impoverishing everyone and saying, ha ha ha, the middle class can't afford to buy a home, everyone has to rent from me, I'm BlackRock, he he he. But at the same time, your specific policies that are kicking the middle class out of their homes are sending inflation through the roof and making the very dollars that you get worth less than they would have otherwise been had you not jimmied with the economy. You're literally sawing off the branch that you're standing on. And the answer to the boomer is that they are just that stupid. They are that ignorant. And, you know, whether or not my smarts in accumulating a hoard of crypto or a hoard of silver will pay off after the great reset in lowercase letters, because it's not going to look like Klaus Schwab thinks it's going to, because it's not going to be controlled by him. It's going to be controlled by the forces of entropy and chaos, as Michael Crichton in Jurassic Park would have said. And so that, I think, is the answer. Oh, and by the way, if Mr. Brown is still listening, if you ever do Jurassic Park, the original, I beg to be on the panel, because that is my all-time favorite movie of all time. And that would be a dream come true. So that's what I think about that. It's very weird, because you think that the people, if they're elite, that they are smart, but they're not. They're morons, for the most part. Not all, you know, but I feel myself that I could, for example, sit in a room and hold my own against, say, Jeff Bezos on any given topic and best him completely. And I'm, you know, I mean, of course, I'm a braggart and an egomaniac, but I also think that that's an accurate appraisal. You know, he's not that smart. I think I could do the same with Hillary Clinton, or certainly a collection of the people that surround Hillary Clinton, the Kamala Harrises and the Victoria Newlands and people like that. So, you know, they're idiots, and they're not actual elites, because they haven't. That's a whole other topic. Other topic. You know, I mean, we talk about like the natural aristocracy and things that Jefferson talked about. That's not these people. These are mediocrities that have risen through the ranks of a sort of corrupted meritocracy on the backs of economic corruption. And so, I mean, in the sense that they're anything at best, they're like robber barons and fat cats, but they're not even that savvy, because those guys actually built something.
The takeaway here, entropy for the you're fermenting chaos, and we threw out a couple of examples on how you could do that. You know, if you do a survey of vital function, or even if you don't really, you know, you could be a trucker, but you could also be a longshoreman, or you could also be someone who stocks the shelves, or you could be any number of people who make society function. If you check out, it has an impact on that society writ large. So if you take it a step further and you coordinate that checkout, you can start. It's basically a strike, but not against your company, against the powers that be, really. And so if you, it's hard though, because it's you know, you think about like coordinating it like with the truckers, they're having all of their accounts and everything banned on social media. So this kind of coordination that's necessary to build the mass required to get your enemy, namely the people in power, to capitulate. It's a very difficult thing to do. So it's difficult. And then if you're just one person, and you walk away from Walmart, you know, Walmart's not going to grind to a halt, and all that's going to happen is you're going to get fired, and now you're out of a job.
Correct.
So what is one to do to foment entropy?
Well, but you see, it's like, and we're going to talk about the Matrix metaphor a little bit later, but it's like the Matrix. As much as you think you need them, right? They actually need you even more. Not as an individual, perhaps, but as a collected whole. And it takes time, as we're going to talk about even also later in this slide, to sort of wake up the masses, right? And we're sort of sounding French revolutionary here at Jacobin, but it's true. It's like the system, the elites have an interest in keeping everyone somnolescent, in a sleep, in a daze, and so that they can feed off of them, just like in the Matrix, right? But if everybody unplugged from the Matrix would end tomorrow. But you can't get everyone to unplug from the Matrix because some people would actually rather be in the Matrix. I'm seeing that with this discussion about, especially about Ukraine, even more than with COVID. And so it's a head scratcher. But I think that it's just one person at a time, like we're doing here on this show.
Yeah, I also think
we love you, Mr. Brown. Thanks for joining us.
You kind of have to be a little more opportunistic with it. Wait, is that not the next slide here?
Yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the next slide.
Yeah.
Here.
So the opportunism element, namely, like you as a single person, you're not Mark Zuckerberg. You cannot manufacture zeitgeist, and you cannot manufacture movements just with the flip of a switch or your AI switch on your social media platform. You cannot reprogram all the NPCs in society overnight like he can and does. So you basically have to, I don't want to say wait, but keep your head on a swivel and identify movements. Is that the trucker movement? Is January 6th? You're on the lookout for opportunities, opportunistic contributions, whether that's donating to them or explicitly participating. But you try to capitalize on organic movements. And I think it would be very difficult unless you're doing a sort of a long march kind of thing, where you're trying to very long term, 20 years, build a community, and eventually with that community, now you have the mass capable of affecting change. Until then, you're basically going to have to look for those opportunities that happen naturally, whether it's a group of disgruntled people, truckers, whatever. These opportunities present themselves in a society, and you can contribute to them as they pop up and try to push them just that much further with your own contributions.
Yeah, and it, when we look at this picture here that's showing the truckers blocking a particular road in Ottawa, if there was one of these guys or two of these guys, it would be ineffectual, maybe even farcical. Some guy standing there, I'm going to block the road. We've all seen those crazy drug addicts standing in the intersections, or maybe I just come from the wrong part of the tracks. But but when you have hundreds and even thousands of people, the critical mass starts to form. And so opportunistic contributions to the entropy of the system that is destroying our culture can be taken individually, but they also can be taken as a group. But, we talked about, and if you go back in your history books, we talked about before the broadcast about solidarity in Poland, and solidarity was the perfect mix of a top-down and a bottom-up organization. There was definitely a plan, but not everything that was planned was the stuff that happened, because sometimes individual longshoremen, for example, or truckers in Poland in the Cold War were like, you know what, we're done. If you're not going to respect us and you're going to say that you represent the peoples and the workers and we're the actual workers, just screw you. We're just not going to come to work. What are you going to do? Shoot us? And whether you are like you said, a police officer, you gave that example. I know there are lots of police officers who are walking off the force. I know that there are a lot of teachers who are walking away from this, critical race theory baloney. I know that there are a lot of truckers who are sitting there and not doing anything. You name it. You name the industry, and all it takes is you saying something. And believe me, that if you're thinking something, somebody else is thinking it too. Maybe you're hearing our voices on rebroadcast, and you're saying, hey, that's what I've been thinking the whole time. Well, guess what? So was Miss Cherie. So was Templar. So was Commander Culture. When we were spread across the world and didn't even know that the others existed, we were all thinking the same thing. And so whether we're acting in concert intentionally, or whether we're just saying, you know what, I've had enough, I'm going to focus on my prepping, I'm going to focus on my family, I'm going to focus on my faith, whatever it is, that is a strength that you have. You have the ultimate power of the ability to walk away from the system at any juncture that you think is in your best interest. That's what opportunistic contributions are about.
I would like to hear from Miss Cherie on what she thinks, the individual, the role of the individual is on all of this. Like, at what point, on one hand, if you're working at Walmart, you walking away is not going to bring Walmart to its knees, and you're basically just shooting yourself in the foot because now you can't even do any more prep work because you don't have an income to do a prep work anymore. So at what point do you as an individual take it upon yourself to try to create opportunities? And at what point are you just basically waiting for an opportunity to present itself for you to capitalize on?
Oh, geez. Well, I mean, I can't speak for other people, but I know myself, I've avoided Walmart like the plague for the last decade. Like, I do not go to Walmart whatsoever. Um, it depends on the person, what they can, afford to do, because some people, wherever they work, that's all they have. Um,
Right.
Well, but
It
here's
would
it's
be
like
tough to expect that person to walk away from like
yeah.
their livelihood in protest, and then the very next day, Jose is already wearing, his is already replaced him, and it's just like, well, what good did that do? And all it did was siphon resources away from someone who's sympathetic to our cause and reallocate them to people who are, for every police officer that walks off the job and gets replaced, there's someone who's willing to just unquestionably follow orders and actually go through.
true. But
Doesn't
let
mean they'll
me
do it well.
right, exactly. And I'm not I would never advocate violence against police officers, but a police officer who routinely and collectively violates the rights of people or their community is much more likely to be taken out, you know. And so if you and that is part of the entropy process. That is part of the
That
chaos
is true.
process. That's
Yeah.
part of accelerationism. That's
Yeah.
exactly what accelerationism is. You have a competent, friendly neighborhood, beat cop, and he says, "I reject all of this. I'm moving up to Montana." And then he's replaced by some third world goon who likes to shoot Australian women in the face in Minnesota,
Mhm.
and you get that entropy type of process. That's exactly what it is. And I want to point out, because you'd mentioned Walmart, but it doesn't have to be like you working at Walmart. It could be like Ms. Cherie said, people shopping at Walmart. And Walmart's profits have peaked, right? Because people refuse to do this. Netflix subscribers, that actually costs you money to call up Netflix and say, "Hey, I want to watch your crap about pedophilia in frickin' France."
Mhm.
Whatever the name of that movie is, Cuties or something like, and everyone just said, "Nope, I'm hanging out up on Netflix," and people walked away, and Netflix cratered. Facebook took the largest dump of any stock in the history of stocks, because they've reached the point of market saturation where all the people who can be conned have been conned and into joining Facebook, and many people just walk away. And that doesn't cost you a dime to just say, I'm just not going to use Facebook anymore. I walk away. And that's part of what this opportunistic contribution is. You don't have to collectively, act in concert to walk away, like a boycott or something like that. You can just say, you know what, this is dumb. I don't get anything out of it. It's just boomers answering all of their, personal password questions. and and fake pictures of people's cats and ex-wives, and I'm not gonna, I've got better things to do. I'll go watch Hulu, or I'll go watch a different streaming service, or I'll just go listen to music or whatever, or I'll go listen to the Commander Culture podcast. And so you walk away, and that system craters. Mark Zuckerberg was like, "I'm going to take over the world with the Meta, and I'm going to control the metaverse from there." And everyone said, "Haha, you sound really stupid. In fact, that reminds me, I'm going to cancel my Facebook." And so not only did he not get to launch his Meta the way he wanted to, the future is still bright, I guess, but he also lost all of his a lot of his stock power, because people just walked right away from his platform in general because it seemed dumb. And that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. Anybody that ever does anything, no matter how small, is contributing to that eventual success. If they remove their consent from the system, that's all that you can do, really. And at a level is introducing entropy for the people who rely on that system as vampiric predators to generate their own power through your sweat and blood. So that's what I have to say. And I did interrupt Miss Cherie's
I was going to say, thanks for
answer.
answering for me. So I'm just going to condense it to say that, the individual votes with their wallet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like it. Shall we next?
We shall.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Speaking of Netflix, I didn't want to jinx myself by posting something up here that had Mr. Or Commander Culture. So I put up here some guy named that has the best business show. I don't know. Apparently he got a strike on YouTube, and the poor guy posted it online, and so I snagged that. Bread and circuses is how the power structure keeps people from engaging in resistance against them, right? If you are fat and if you are happy, you don't really have the incentive or the motivation to destroy the system that's keeping you fat and happy. Now, I will tell you that beef cattle are very fat and very happy. That doesn't mean that it's going to end well for them. And just because you have bread and circuses does not mean that it's going to end well for you, which is why we here on the Commander Culture channel and our Acceleration for Radicals broadcast today are talking about terminating those bread and circuses. We talk about we mention, and you can jump in if I'm not exhaustive on this. You terminate it not just for yourself, where you say, you know what, I'm going to eat better. I'm going to exercise more. I'm going to spend more time with my family. I'm going to walk away from Netflix. I'm going to spend less time, doing frivolous activities and spending more time learning how to garden or sew or something like that. And it also means terminating them for other people. Okay, that doesn't mean going out and like literally ripping the plug out, but it means, for example, I know this is the case with both Cherie and I, where we've tried to talk to our parents and said, look, if you're watching mainstream media, you're, in a daze. You're being misinformed. Here are some alternatives, right? Now, whether they take those or not is up to them, but evangelizing other people out of the bread and circuses lifestyle is one of the way to sort of, as we'll talk about later, unplug people from the matrix, right? They're trying to impoverish you by lavishing you with crap, right? If you're a beggar and you have 10,000 potato sacks to clothe yourself with, you might think yourself very rich, indeed. But in fact, you are not. You're just impoverished with a whole bunch of crap. And that's what this whole Great Reset thing is about. You'll eat less meat and you'll be happy. No, you know what? Actually, you'll go F yourself and we will be in charge of the world. That's how that's going to go. If they terminate you, for example, the reason I actually chose this slide here, because I fully expect that the Commander Culture channel is going to be pulled off the air at some point. As soon as we get enough subscribers, by the way, subscribe so I can get canceled. We're just going to keep talking truth. We're going to talk about how the Biden fraud stole the election from Trump. We're going to talk about how COVID is a lab-generated horror that was a political ploy to take power from people. We're going to talk about how the World Economic Forum are a bunch of snakes and a whole bunch of other stuff. Not everything we want to talk about because we're not on DLive or anything yet. But this is the thing. We will eventually get canceled. We will be terminated from their little game. But that just makes us more powerful. What do the Jedi say? You can strike me down now, but I shall become more powerful than you will possibly imagine. And that's exactly it. The more that they strike you, the trucker, out of the rally, now you have even more power. If you are a martyr of the January 6th movement, right, you now have even more power. If you're a deplatformed YouTuber or cultural commenter or Templar Knight, or Ravenous Beauty, then you have even more power once you've been terminated and canceled. And the more people that you can pull out of that system of bread and circuses, the less power that the system has. And now the more power that you have. Not that we're trying to accrete power to ourselves by having a YouTube channel. Thoughts as I ramble.
Yeah, I think the number one bread and the number one circus there, it's mostly tied to electricity because those are the biggest conveniences. And not that you should just take out your local power grid or anything, but if you
Heaven
did
forbid.
that, it would be people would emerge from their houses squinting at the sun and where am I? Like, this isn't my phone. And even in Ukraine now, as grids start going down, people are more worried about what happens when their phone dies than where their next meal is going to be. And so I don't think people even realize that's the best slave is the one who doesn't even realize they're a slave. So they don't realize how tied in
Mhm.
they are to these systems, and it's very hard to get people, animated for really anything because they get all of the satisfaction through their phone. Why do I need to go join a rally when I can, watch it and root for my team from the comfort of my living room? And so again, it's not necessarily about like taking the grid down or anything. If you can get people to voluntarily check out of these things, I'm not on social media anymore. These things are created for the explicit purpose of controlling you. So just don't participate in them in general. Convince your friends not to participate in them. Spend more time doing things that are productive. Spend more time outside. So do that as voluntarily as possible. But once you start getting into, I guess, the trucker rallies, it's not like the trucker rally itself would, shut the lights off or anything, but it definitely has the possibility. Anyone within the supply chain uh, interfering, not getting, could be gas. Gas would almost have that same effect. It wouldn't necessarily shut the lights off, but you'd have to very quickly figure out how to reorient your life. It would immediately snap you out. You would go, I'm hungry. I want to go get some food. Oh, I can't go get food because I don't have gas. And so it would produce the outcome that Mr. McEntee here is describing, getting people to break their addictions. And that's exactly what it is. And it's like, why are you trying to do that? So that they aren't focused on indulging their addictions. They're focusing on improving the circumstances that led them to seek out an addiction in the first place.
Mhm. And
Brilliantly
and
said.
and train them when they're young. Do not let your kids have tablets and iPhones and
Yeah.
electronics. I mean, people act like, "Oh, well, how else am I supposed to, keep them entertained or this or that?" It's like, I grew up without it. I know my mom grew up without it. It's like the kids don't need all that. They have their
Mhm.
imaginations.
Mhm. Yeah, but I will say this: if you are a social media addict, please go to Gab
Yeah.
.com and subscribe to the Commander Culture channel there. But only if you're already an addict. If you're not an addict, don't get on Gab. Don't do anything. Don't interact with all the crazy people that are there, all the nationalists and all the crazy types. That we have a lot of fun. But if you are an addict, then go ahead and sign up.
Well,
So I will.
everyone's a victim of the same influences. I'm like, okay, I was on Facebook, and then I was like, you know what? I'm done with Facebook, so I got off that. And then Instagram popped up, and I was like, oh, this is better, because it's not just like consistent feed; it's just
Mhm,
pictures, and it's way
mhm,
more like family/user friendly because I can share pictures, with my parents, people I like this is great. It's like a photo album that you're looking through all the time. And then
mhm.
it had its own appeal, and then I was like, all right, this is too much time and it's not a good influence. So then I cut that one out. And then you have all the other apps like Snapchat and whatnot, and I just never even got into those that much in the first place. But then you have something like Telegram, and it's like, hey, this is a great app. It's not, it doesn't have nearly as much censorship as the other ones, and then you end up consuming all the same content, and it's very difficult. It's very fine line because stuff happens like Ukraine or the trucker protests, and you want to every hour you're updating it, and at the end of the day you spent 8 hours on your phone, and you're like, okay, is this really the most productive use of my time? So most people who are plugged in aren't even thinking about that. The first step is at least just becoming aware of the fact that, like, wait a minute, maybe I shouldn't be using my phone for 8 hours a day. And you cut yourself off from that. You try to cut your friends off from that, and then maybe eventually you cut off society from that, whether they like it or not. And then
I,
then things get fun really quick.
Well, I remember, I think it was Hurricane Sandy or something that hit the East Coast. And there were stories that I just found hilarious where people are walking around with their dead phones. You know, their cell phones' batteries have long since died. There's no cell phone signals because all the things are broken down or the power's out. And they're just still looking at their phones that are black screen, you know, because their addiction is so strong that it's like, well, there's going to be something. I'm just going to keep pressing the power button, or I'm going to keep swiping right. Or whatever they did, and you know, hundreds of people walking around like this. It was a phenomenon, and that's what I thought of when you mentioned, you know, people stunned walking outside, sort of blinking at the sky, you know, and that's really what it is. What do you think about Telegram addictions, Miss Cherie?
Well, I mean, I'm on it, but I don't have an addiction. Like, you know, it's part of
Yeah,
my day, but
denial.
I work it
Oh,
into where, like, let me finish. I work it into, like, you know, like, I get up, I get stuff done around the house, and then when I'm taking a break, I'll check it. And then
mm.
once I've, you know, went through whatever group it is, then I'm like, okay, well, I've done that. Now I'm gonna, you know, go do this. So I don't spend
And
8 hours on it.
I will say I do appreciate it because it saves me the time, because I can just ask you, hey, what's on Telegram, and you'll give me the rundown. You'll send me all the memes, and then I can get caught up. And so it's kind of like having a secretary, um, a Telegram secretary. But yeah, I get exactly what you are talking about, and we've all sort of been there. I think whether it was, you know, MySpace back in the day, or Snapchat, or God forbid something like TikTok, which thank goodness I've never even touched. But you know, they all have their appeal. Snapchat was fun for what it was worth. You know, Instagram was fun until it became all ads and stuff. I don't know. I logged into it the other day just on a whim, and I was like, this is dumb. Like, all the people that I subscribe to that are not like family are like, they're just selling something. Oh, look, here's my new line of, you know, cosmetics, or here's my new line of protein supplements or whatever. And I'm
All
just
my
like,
friends got banned,
hey.
so now it's like there's nobody even on here anymore
Oh,
that
banned
I want
from
to associate
Instagram.
with. Yeah.
Wow.
Uh,
That's edgy.
yeah. Yeah. But so when you're talking about bread and circuses, so social media is
Mhm.
one of them.
Big
Sports
one.
ball is another one. I hate sports. This is kind of the virtue of just, I guess, growing up doing a sport that
Because you are
I
an
hated.
athlete, but
Some would say. But I wrestled my whole life, and it's the worst thing I've ever done in my life. And this again is in like the context of being in the military. So I guess I don't want anything to do with that sport anymore, and I have no attachment to any other sports. So I'm in the enviable position of not having any interest in sports ball in general. I call it just to cover all the bases. You know, whether that's baseball. Some people, you know, baseball's their thing. Some football. Some basketball. And basically, you know, you would think that after all of the NFL's antics, you know, even in the Super Bowl, they had, what did they have in the end zone? BLM or something, or racism is bad, or end racism, I think is what they had on one of the end zone markers. And it was like, yeah, you get all these conservatives, you know, hooping and hollering about how bad, you know, they want to own the liberals. And NFL is just like pumping out this content that, you know, is obviously against everything they believe. And here they are tuning in religiously to all of the programs that this organization that hates them has to offer, and they can't separate themselves. They can't not watch the Super Bowl.
well, I think,
I yeah, I
yeah.
don't
Well, I don't.
care about
Mhm.
sports. I didn't watch the Super Bowl. I didn't even know, you know, who won
Who was
until people
playing?
told
Yeah.
me. And then yeah, and I'm
Mhm.
like, I don't care. And again, I don't see how anyone could possibly have an interest. But I get it. You know, some people like video games a lot. Like, I happen to enjoy video games. Other people who maybe watch sports don't like. So I understand how there's a disconnect. But it's just one of those things where it's like,
Well, I
it's a
think
distraction. It's
the
is
yeah
all it is.
the key is to find out what your particular circus is, and
Yeah.
is it something that is just detracting from your life while empowering the people who are trying to enslave you.
Hmm.
You know, and so there's a difference. I think, you know, like, you know, for example, one of several of Miss Cherie's acquaintances are very, very into the sports ball. And by that, when I say that, I mean, like, they like any sport that has a ball, and they follow it, and they talk about all the different people. You know, whereas for me, I really enjoy baseball. I enjoy the history. I enjoy the ambiance. I enjoy sort of the sportsmanship that accompanies it. I also appreciate that it's less stupidly woke than some of the other sports, or at least in your face. And I would like to think, and she might be able to comment on it, that there's a difference between sort of just slavishly saying, "Oh, me like all sports because me trying to compensate for lack of masculinity in other areas of me life," and somebody who says, "Well, I have a refined appreciation for this one small thing." It's to be the same with video games. If you say, "I really like Halo and the storyline and the arcs and all of the world that goes around that," but I'm not just going to be sitting there playing Candy Crush all day long, or every new little Nintendo game that comes out. I'm more of a connoisseur of one particular thing that I don't overindulge in, as opposed to just allowing it to numb your brain and your senses. And I think that's the thing to be important about, because I'm not much of an athlete, although I did participate in plenty of sports in high school. And so, I always had that sort of tendency to be like, oh, jocks, the meatheads and whatever. But it's not really fair. I think that the key is moderation, and to make sure that your enjoyment is greater than the ride that you're being taken for by the people who want to enslave you. I think that as long as you can maintain that balance in your work, family sort of life, then you're good. But most people aren't, like these people that are just like, hey, sports. Actually, I shouldn't pick on Miss Cherie. I've got cousins, who are like, oh, we're Raiders fans, God forbid I admit it publicly. And they just talk about all this stuff. It's just, it's nauseating, honestly. Sort of this like slavish attention to other people having achievements, physical achievements.
Yeah, if you like a sport, then you should play it, not watch it. Not that you shouldn't not watch it, but sports are great when you're the one doing them, and they make you better off as a result. But what they should not be is an opportunity for you to try to live victory vicariously through other people and be content with your nasty self in your living room.
All right. Have we said what needs to be said on bread and circus?
The last bread and circus, which I think is the most compelling, the most insidious, the most destructive to you, and the most helpful to them, is pornography. And I could probably go on about this for a while, especially from a religious context, but even from a secular perspective, the amount of damage that it does to you and everyone around you, whether that's your relationships or even the people who you're watching, it is almost incalculable, the amount of damage that's being done, and then how much control and wealth and I guess just evil is concentrated in the hands of the people on the other end. It cannot be overstated. If there was one bread and circus that you could eliminate, for me it would be that.
And you'll see the most benefit from eliminating it from your life, both in the pride that comes from being able to eliminate something that's negative, and then also just the ancillary effects of it not affecting you directly anymore, I would say. Because it seems like, back, I don't know when it was, in the 90s or something, when I was a youth, and I'm like, all those religious nuts. Yeah, of course it's bad. It's like, not good, not wholesome and stuff, but it's just like anything else. But it's, I would say, like, I would agree with you that it's much more insidious, and it's much more immediate to people's lives, because you can't get crack cocaine directly from your internet. You can't,
the accessibility, and then it's like innocuous as well. It's like commonplace. And at this point, it's almost like, where do you even draw the line? Like, Instagram has like a no nudity policy, and it's like, well, you could get pretty close on there, and it's just so accessible, right up to and including to all the content that you could possibly imagine. And so, how pervasive it is, accessible it is, enticing it is. I forget which saint said it, but more people go to hell for sins of the flesh than anything else. So, insofar as you value your soul, that is the number one killer right there. And I think there's a direct correlation to things that will cause you to go to hell and things that will bring you hell on earth in this life as well. I believe there's a direct relationship between those two things. So, religiously, secularly, I can think of very few things that are up there with pornography, with how bad it is for you, how good it is for evil people, and for those reasons that we already said, how accessible it is, how innocuous it is. And,
Miss Cherie, do you have any thoughts as a woman?
Yes, I'm going to take it back a few steps though and say
Please.
that, I've never been on Instagram or Snapchat, and I was off of Facebook for like almost 5 years until I moved, and it's the only way I can stay, in touch with family back home conveniently. But I remember when I wasn't on, it was like my life was so much better because I didn't have to see everyone's single thought about, stuff that mostly I didn't agree with.
Or care
And
about.
then, or that, yeah. And then also back to sports ball. I just want to say that I haven't, like, I used to like watching the Super Bowl just for the commercials and the halftime show. That was like a long time ago. I haven't seen a halftime show, I don't know, in like the last 5 years, maybe. I did get curious and look up this year's just because of like some memes I had seen. But I just
On
want to say,
Telegram.
no, I don't think on there. But
I'm just messing. Go ahead.
but no, I wanted to point out all these people were like, "Oh, it was so good," and blah blah. Like, no, it was horrible. It was so cheap. I was like, "What is this?" Like, I think each year it just gets worse, and that also probably ties into the pornographic nature of what all we see on TV these days, from like Miley Cyrus shaking her butt on stage and sticking her
yeah.
tongue out, and
And
uh,
I don't want to sound like a boomer railing against
yeah.
porn or anything, because it's like all those darn kids. At first it was they were showing their ankles, and then it was they're showing their
Mhm.
knee and out, and then it was like they're wearing pants instead of skirts. But it's like at this point, it's like no, you're talking about 15-year-old girls who are looking forward to their birthday so they can open their 18-year-old birthday so they can open an OnlyFans account and hopefully be disgusting enough to try to make a living doing that. And you have representatives from OnlyFans going to college campuses to recruit
Mhm.
these people into this as
Oh, I saw
industry.
that. I would
And it's
knock that guy the fuck out if I ever
yeah,
saw somebody like that. Oh
like
my god.
we're approaching the level of evil to the point where it's I'm not gonna Fed post. Never mind. I'm
Well, I would
not.
say there's a difference between like, back in the day when like, oh, the rock and roll's the devil, blah blah blah. But now you've got
Right.
like actual songs about, WAP and those who know what that means.
Yeah,
Um,
but it's not even like the ancillary items like music or clothing or whatever. It's like it's an industry explicitly set up for grooming the innocence out of people,
mhm.
Yeah.
and subsequently profiting off of like those passions. And it's just
Well,
I don't know
and it also
if I
plays
were
off. I'd say it also plays off of people's vanity, like those 18-year-olds to however old they are on OnlyFans or whatever cam girl sites that they use. It's
yeah.
vanity, it's easy money if, they get enough followers or whatever. But, it's not gonna that gravy train isn't gonna last forever, and then they're gonna wonder why no good man wants them. And I
Yeah,
saw a horrible headline the other day was some OnlyFans model, while she was doing a shoot a few yards away, her 2-year-old was drowning in a pool. So good job there, mom.
Mother of the year.
Hmm.
yeah.
Mother of the
I don't know.
year.
These are all symptoms of a disease that's kind of greater than that. But yeah, be on the lookout for that kind of evil and abstain from it, and don't participate in betting games. Whatever your vice is, conquer it and focus on the things that matter, which is the fight that we're currently in, the struggle from the
Mm-hmm.
Western world.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Oh, and
Uh,
also it gives young people unrealistic expectations out of relationships, especially, sexual, like what to expect. And yeah, it's just better if you don't look at it.
far better. And all of that comes to this idea of unplugging from the matrix, which is kind of a cliche sort of thing, but it just works so well. Where this system needs you in order to function. It needs your consent. It needs your bodily essence. And the best way that you can regain your life is by either unplugging from it, or like the Truman Show here, that we have the thing like realizing that you are the mark, right? There's that great saying that says, if you're sitting at a poker table and you don't know who the mark is or who the chump is, it's you. And so if you look around and you don't know what the F is going on, then you're the dummy, and you're the one that's being raked over the coals, and you're the one that's being bled dry. And so remove yourself from that. And the more people that we can remove from that, the better. That's why, I say, like, share, and subscribe. Go find me on Gab. And, it's not just because I'm a vainglorious goofball. It's because the more people that we have as a group, the more we can affect the change in the culture to bring it about to one that we want it, the one that it needs to be. And that starts with unplugging people from the matrix. Taking the red pill, so to speak, is the first step in that. Templar?
Yeah, no, I think it's the combination of some of the things we already talked about, of separating yourself from the things that they use to control you, like those, not only those dependencies, but also those distractions. And then, and so now you're unplugged at that point, and you're able to take a step back and see, the world that they've created for you. And then you have to kind of look around and say, okay, how can I affect change in the way that I want to? And that's where you start looking for those opportunities to facilitate entropy. So it's kind of the combination of those two things: separating yourself from the vices used to control you, and then seeking to participate in the events that kind of undermine their ability to control not just you but everyone else as well. And I honestly, I like the Truman Show analogy a lot better than the Matrix one. I only because it's kind of focused around one man. It's not like a farm or anything. It's just one man, and everyone's kind of in on it except for him. And I don't know. I feel like people can kind of just relate to that a little better because I don't know. We're all individuals. Not that we're self-centered, but you have your Truman Show. They have created a world just for you, and so you have the opportunity. And even at the end, the director of the Truman Show, if you haven't even seen it, basically talks to him and tells him, like, you
Spoiler
can choose.
alert.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
But you can choose. You can choose to leave the Truman Show or not. But like you know the things that are good. I guess it's the same red pill, blue pill, but I don't know. I just like the Truman Show example a little more.
Well, yeah, and because it's eerie, and especially once you realize that this world has, we see the old sci-fi movies, like, where the person's walking along the space age corridor and all the advertisements that they can see are like tuned to them because they have a chip in their brain or whatever, and everyone sees a different advertisement. But it's almost like that now, where YouTube will show you the stuff that you want to see. That my YouTube feed looks very different from Miss Cherie's YouTube feed, even though we sit there, and we watch YouTube together. I mean, everything is sort of like because people are egotistical. And so if it could be tailored to your own desires, you can think that you are the center of the universe. And by having them, the elites, quote, make you think that you're the center of the universe, they make you think that you have control. And if you have control, why would you want to disrupt that particular system? That, I mean, again, the Matrix, I saw the Matrix more than I saw the Truman Show, so I'll come back to that one. But, in the Matrix, the original movie, which was very good, there was a guy who actually wanted to go back into the Matrix because there he had a good life. What's this outside? Reality? Who cares? Back there I could eat steak, and I could have beautiful women, and I could be secure and stuff. And so people, are inherently drawn to comfort and security. And so they create that illusion around you. As we see in Ukraine, there is no security. As we see from our inflation, there is no security. As we see from the stolen election from Trump, there is no security.
There's no security other than what you create for yourself.
Correct.
And your
in the divine
immediate community. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And so that's a big step to understanding. And it's very easy to create that security for yourself. Going back to the beginning of our podcast where we said, if you're the one being surprised, you're in big trouble. But if you're the one doing the surprise, as you know, that's what accelerationism is. You know, the best offense, the best defense being a good offense, being the person who's in control, who has agency within a system that tries to deprive people of agency. And all you have to do is stand up and say, hey, you know, what do they say in what's that old movie? You know, is it I'm a human being? God damn it! And that's all that you have to do to take back some measure of control in your life from the people who just sort of create this fuzzy bubble. That's the, you know, Cherie.
All the world is a stage.
Nah, yeah. Even Shakespeare knew that, and all the people merely players, who strut and fret their moment upon the stage and then are heard no more. And that's really what it is. And what did they say? What did Solomon say? You know, all is vanity. And once we can get past that, our lives become a lot better. You know, I read a lot of Ecclesiastes when I was a teenager. I just read that thing over and over and over and over again. It's a short book in the Bible, Ecclesiastes, and I recommend it to everyone because it puts all of that in perspective. We are but, you know, poor players on the stage who strut and fret our special moment and then are heard no more. You know, we are not that important, but they try to make us think that we are that important to prevent us from creating entropy within the system that they have sort of delicately set up to enrich and empower them in particular. And by them, I mean, of course, the Davos set. Let's move on here to comfortable people don't accomplish much. And I must admit that here, Mr. Templar and I, we kind of looked at it and we were thinking different things and had different opinions based on that. I'm pretty sure that man in the foreground is Abraham Lincoln come back from the grave. I don't know what's going on there. That's actually Alexander Platz in West Germany. And the reason that I chose that picture of West Germany in the 1970s, which you can tell from the bell bottoms, is because West Germany was a city that was absolutely cratered by the effects of the last days of World War II, the Soviet occupation, and all kinds of other things. And within 30 years, it had bounced back to being this sort of glistening metropolis. The people that were in Berlin in 1945 were not comfortable people. And because they were not comfortable, they did what they could with the powers that they had and the ingenuities that they had to make their life as comfortable as possible. This other pictures like a lithograph of American frontiersmen who were not very comfortable. And so what did they do? They carved one of the greatest nations in human history out of the woods with their own raw manpower. And so when you have people who are plugged into the matrix, when you have people who are addicted to porn and sports ball, when you have people who are fat, dumb, and happy with soy burgers, you have people who are not accomplishing much. They're accomplishing only enough to make them not be a threat to the system. And because the system is evil, you want to be a threat to that particular system. We all want to be a threat to that particular system. And so sitting in luxurious comfort, it might not be the best way to do that either for ourselves and for other people. And that's part of what accelerationism is about. If the electricity grid goes off and people's cell phones stop working, they're very uncomfortable. And so what will they do? They'll take action, either against the people who made the energy go off in the first place by their corrupt and tyrannical dictates, or they will create their own power grid and set up little power cells and go off and do things outside of the system, the corrupt system. And that's exactly what we want. Either people working outside the system or people, how do I say this? Creating a better system from the ashes of the old.
Yes.
I mean, did that kind of encapsulate? I know we chatted before the stream to make sure we were on the same page.
We saw this and we thought of two different things. If I'm summarizing your point correctly, it was almost more of like a top-down thing where you're like being uncomfortable. You have to create comfort as a prerequisite for bigger and better things. It's kind of like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs sort of thing. These guys are building their house so that eventually they could probably work on a farm, have some more food security. And then once you have food security, You could start, creating some more less items that are more so wants rather than needs. And going to the moon is something that you want to do, and it's a collective effort. But usually, people who are starving aren't striving to go to the moon. So you're almost seeking out a comfortable population. You're trying to create comfort for your people so that they could focus on bigger and better things, not how to survive.
And I
When
would say,
I
oh no,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
I'm sorry. No. I just want to make the point real quick. Keep remembering your point, but if you are being given comfort, that's how a ruler maintains a slave. You give them a vegetable patch where they can grow their fried chicken and watermelon. You give them the clothes that they need to go out and pick cotton. You
Well, that
allow
was
them to sit
exactly
around
my
and
point. I
play the
think was
banjo.
yeah,
Yeah, and so if somebody's
is that
giving you comfort, you're in big trouble. You need to
yes,
wake up and look around. If you've built your own comfort, as these West Germans have, as these frontiersmen have, that's a comfort that you can sit back, relax, and enjoy. Proceed.
yeah. So when I saw that comfortable people don't accomplish much, I thought of it as like a bottom up sort of way where it's like you're basically given enough to placate your desire for something better.
Hmm.
And the good is the biggest threat to great. You can if
Hmm.
you're content in your position and you're like this is good enough, you're not going to get off your butt and go strive for something greater. Similarly, if you're in the United States, in all honesty, like life in the United States, as much as people complain, at the end of the day, it's the most one of the most prosperous countries in the world. Still has a high GDP per capita. Like you would almost look around and say, like, wow, these people are they're so like greedy because they have all these very nice things. America is such a prosperous country, and they're still complaining that it's not good enough. And it's like, well, on one hand, yes, it's not good enough, but it's really not good enough to compare to what it could be if we weren't being held back by a lot of these people who don't want the best for us. And so it is a valid gripe. And I don't want to look around and say like, oh well, I have a TV and air conditioning and a car, and I can go to the grocery store and buy some food. Yeah, I might not be able to like own the amount of land that I would need to be self-sufficient, because Bill Gates bought it all, and then I might not be able to own a house where each of my children get their own bedroom. Now we all have to sleep in one room, but at least we have a roof over our heads, as opposed to people in the Philippines who have like leaky tin shacks. Like, no, I'm not going to settle for that just because my betters have already bought up everything else in the country. It's like I know that America as a country is capable of the most amazing things in the world. And you think of things like the space shuttle or the Saturn V. Granted, that was a Nazi scientist that did the Saturn V, but
Easy there,
you know,
Templar.
oh yeah, Homer Hickam. Homer Hickam did the space shuttle there, so we can claim as Americans, that grand feat. And it's like, what else would be possible? What else would be possible if we weren't just constantly trying to pick ticks off of our backs, and trying to get rid of these stomach bugs, these parasites that just feed off of the greatness that America could be. Like, why don't we finish Mount Rushmore? Why doesn't France rebuild the Notre Dame, even bigger and better than before? It seems like all of the
Why
great
can't
things that
we?
we have,
You
yeah,
mentioned the
are
Saturn
from
V
the past.
rocket. We can't even build a Saturn V rocket again. They've tried, and they don't know how. They have all the blueprints, and that's why we haven't been able to send larger payloads into outer space. I was looking it up, and I was appalled because you hit on that exact proper point where we're so comfortable now that we are immobilized. People say, "Well, why haven't we gone back to the moon?" That makes no sense. It's like because we're just sitting there watching Netflix.
Yeah.
I mean, they can't figure out how to build the Saturn V, and we have the actual blueprints here. And you said, what did you say? Good is the enemy of great, and I love that saying. My saying is equality is the opposite of quality, and that's another one of our problems. We're so focused, like you say, on tending to our parasites that we refuse to do what it takes to become better than the sum of our collected parasite infected body politic. Michael McEntee here, and I know I interrupted you, Templar, I apologize, says, you commit secular heresy by interfering with people's comfort and convenience. And really you do. You can see them sitting there, Donald Sutherland in the Invasion of the Body Snatcher style going, ooh, and screeching and pointing at you when you interfere with their comfort and convenience. When you tell them something like, this COVID thing might have been planned as a thing to take away your political rights, or Putin was provoked into invading Ukraine, or the people who are actually in charge of the Federal Reserve are the ones who are actually stealing the money out of your pocket. Now I have to think about it, and that makes me uncomfortable. And you're branded a heretic. We're all heretics here, which is why we all expect to be deplatformed and have been at certain points in our time. Or removed from our little sinecures of power that we have. I'm sorry, Templar, I did interrupt you to make that point.
Yeah. I just think that the takeaway here is basically don't accept the scraps that they throw to you just because you're able to survive off of those scraps. Things, you look around and things might be good, but compared to what they could be, how great things could be, we are wholly unacceptable. And that thought alone, try to picture for a second in America of how great it could be. And that should be enough to turn your TV off and get you animated about the future.
In this whole thing that's going on with Ukraine, it's something, frankly, that I've been expecting since 1992. And that's not an exaggeration. Pat Buchanan said the things that we were doing to Russia would eventually end in a war in Ukraine or somewhere like it, on the periphery of Russia, for these very specific reasons. And I've just been following it in sort of awe at the stupidity and hubris of the people who call themselves our betters, in driving us relentlessly towards death, conflict, destruction, and the ruination of everything that stronger and smarter people have built. And anyway,
don't accept the comfort that they offer you. It's pales in comparison to the kind of life that you could have. And
and that's
Well,
that's so I'm coming up with a saying pretty soon. You'll see it when I start broadcasting in a different format here. But it says essentially, that I remember a future that was taken from us. I think that's a very, very profound way of looking at things. There was a meme that says something like, "You were made for more than this," or "We don't have to live this way." Is something that Chateau Hartiste used to say before he was blasted off the internet. It's like we had a future. We had a future of peace. We had a future of prosperity. We had a future of, goodwill in general. We had a future where we, Western people, could live and build and move out to the stars. And all of that is being taken from us. The Ukrainian people and the Russian people and the Polish people and the American people that are all tied up in these stupid bombings going on here and there in Kiev, however long that goes on for, could be building Saturn V rockets, could be farming the lush fields of the Ukraine, could be, improving our culture and our civilization. But instead, they, in parentheses, 3 of them or 2 of them or however many parentheses you need, have prevented that from actually happening because they enjoy other people's discomfort. They enjoy feeling small twinges of control. And so that's where we're at.
They will allow you to have exactly the absolute minimum amount of comfort required to keep you from contesting their authority. So you cannot be in the mindset of I'll stop protesting, or I'll leave this trucker protest as soon as they let me stop wearing a mask, or as soon as they give me my bank account back.
Like you said, when you strike the king, be sure you kill him. That famous saying. And it's like, now the gloves are off. Like, it's not a matter of masks anymore. It's not a matter of vaccines. It's not a matter of travel passports or something. We saw what happened. We saw how Canada almost devolved into a civil war over the weekend. And that was what they wanted to happen, but they didn't get their civil war in Canada, so they started a war somewhere else in the world. And it's that close. It's at a knife's edge. Don't let them try to dictate to you the terms of your own surrender, because until these people are all gone, we can't have a peaceful, prosperous life. We have to live the hard life of deprivation so that our kids will eventually be able to start rebuilding our culture. That's what it's all about. That's the only expectation we can have.
100%. And what that looks like is you're a trucker, you're in Canada, you're freezing your nuts off over there, and they say something like, we'll temporarily remove COVID mandate, we'll remove mask mandates, and you can have your bank account back. And you might go, okay, all right, I'm miserable here right now, and I get all of these things back. I could call a victory. Nobody would blame me for going home at this point. And, I did my part and go home with a smile on your face. You could do that, but you can't. You can't afford to do that. You have to be willing to endure, and you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, so that, like Commander Culture alluded to, what the saying goes, because my parents didn't, and so that my children don't have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, powerful stuff. And what that does is it puts us in a different realm than we had before. We're no longer customers. We're no longer theoreticians. We're no longer consumers. We're no longer producers. What we become in that sense now are radicals, right? The power system, well, belligerents perhaps, but radicals for sure, because we stand against the power system as it exists. Now, the power system that we have now, the globo homo, where did it go? Where's my little
the gay?
Yeah, here we go. The gay. There we are. The globalist American empire. Why are you gay? They are in control, and they are a leftist, psychotic, Marxist tyranny. And these rules for radicals were come up with by a leftist, Marxist, psychotic tyrant, but it works. Just like, fourth generation warfare or Sun Tzu's Art of War doesn't have to just work in China. These rules for radicals work for anybody who is underneath a diametrically opposed power system. So did we want to go through these sort of briefly step by step and talk about it, or how did we want to?
Yeah, I mean, I would say attack them as they jump out. I think it would be useful. I think an example would be most useful for this first one. Power is not only what you have, but what the enemy thinks you have. I would say a great example of, I could think of it in the context of like Napoleon's army and about basically fixing one. I forget which battle it was, but there was like 5 separate nations that were converging on him. And he would send, a blocking force of maybe 5,000 troops to hold up an army of 15,000, long enough for him to take his dudes and overwhelm them one at a time. So I don't know I guess this is mostly capitalizing on the unknown. If you're in the Appalachian Mountains and there is a force of opposing belligerents who's coming to oppress you, they probably don't know how many people you have, and you could use that to work in your favor.
Yeah, and the biblical story of Gideon was like that, right? Where he had all of his guys, he had his 100 soldiers, all of them were carrying. He had these guys carrying torches, but 90% of them were covered in pots. And then he had them break the pots, and all of a sudden you've got 100 or more lights all around, and the enemy's like, "Oh my God, we're completely surrounded because only a sergeant or whatever is going to carry a torch, and so we've got all these squads around us, and they flee in the middle of the night." And then his guys, his 100 men, walked down and took over the camp that had been 5,000 enemies. So power being what the enemy thinks that you have is key. Again, battlefield intelligence and I guess a propaganda effort is part of that.
Yeah.
Ms. Cherie, any thoughts on any of this? On how about thoughts on using Rules for Radicals from the demon Saul Alinsky himself to bolster a fourth generation warfare effort against the gay?
I'm going to leave that to the men.
Well, the great thing about this actually is that it's not necessarily kinetic. There are things that you could do.
It's mostly cultural.
Yeah, honestly, it's like things that you can do within the context of a city, even where you basically look at someone the wrong way and you catch a fine for it, or you call the police on someone committing the crime and you get arrested. It's like, well, what can someone even do in a system as authoritarian as that? And a lot of these are kind of apply in these situations. So never go outside the expertise of your own people. I mean, the truckers are kind of showing this one extremely well. It's like, what do? I drive a truck. So how are you gonna fight the system? I'm gonna drive my truck to your doorstep. And it's like, okay, well, good job. What else? And we mentioned the longshoremen. And there's a lot of things that a lot of different people can do that are within their realm of expertise. And then the next logical piece is outside the expertise of the enemy. And it's like, okay, well, all the government knows is brute force and I don't know, power in numbers. So if you can kind of get them out of their comfort zone, you get them away from their nodes of infrastructure, their nodes of support. You put them in an environment that they're not used to being in, whether that's the people themselves, because human factors are always a thing. If you have troops coming from DC to come enforce something, or if you have cops who are used to, being on a beat in a urban area, and they have to come out to the mountainside to impose their will on you. Now they're in your backyard, and they probably aren't as familiar. It's amazing, actually. This might be too far down a rabbit hole, but something as simple as the winter. I guess every Canadian is naturally, immune to the cold, but basically, like when you introduce something like as soon as the temperature drops to 31 degrees, you introduce a whole host of problems that most people, you can't even think about all of the problems associated with that one little piece of information. And so you might have people who haven't been to the field in a while, and they go out to the field and they forget that their Camelback freezes a lot faster than a water bottle that might be hooked onto their belt or something, because your Camelback, is in your backpack. It's not as close to your body, so it's not providing heat. And so now you've got dudes running around without water for extended periods of time, and the tiniest things can work absolute miracles in crippling your enemy. And it's the funniest thing. And I don't have any specific examples in history, but I know for a fact that there are plenty of military blunders that occur for just the dumbest reasons, for the most minute like influences. Something as simple as the temperature dropping from 32 to 31 degrees, and your whole campaign is shot. For something as stupid as like the water in the pipes freezing and bursting, and now you don't have water, which you can't survive without for more than 3 days. And it's just like, wow, that was a very simple thing that happened that crippled my entire army. So when you're talking about going outside the expertise of the enemy, it introduces all of these possibilities for just things to go very wrong very quickly. It could be whether the environment or like nature. It could be something as simple as like they don't know what the plants are. Like if you're from a part of the country that doesn't have poison ivy, and now they're chasing someone through the woods, and then they all get poison ivy, you very quickly stop worrying about the guy you're trying to pursue and start worrying about, why that leaf that you wiped with is causing you so much problems. And so it's very simple things that can cripple people very quickly. And that's just the utility of step 3 there. But I'm sure I could go on for a long time about different examples of those little friction points that prevent people from accomplishing very simple tasks when they're out of their element.
Well, and that's, I guess, if we want to look at the concept of people's war or whatever, it is death by 1,000 cuts to your enemy. there's no daisy cutter that you could do to stop the Royal Canadian Mounted Police from acting tyrannical, but there is many tiny little small things that you could do to prevent them from being as effective as their job, or anything like that. I like it. Let's move on to step 4, because this one I really like. Make the enemy live up to its own book of rules. And this is beautiful. I put the addition there, sort of make the revolution eat its own. And that's especially useful when your enemies are, quote, revolutionaries. And people on the right would never usually consider themselves revolutionaries, for a lot of reasons. But the left always does. And they revel in the idea of being revolutionaries. They always say we have to protect the revolution when they're, while they're like controlling batons, beating down people's heads, asking for freedom. And if their own rules say, equality uber alles, if their own rules say, diversity is our strength, if their own rules say, kill the rich or eat the rich or whatever, okay, well, let's apply that. This is hilariously brought to the fore in what's going on in Ukraine right now, because whether people know it or not, for lots of different historical reasons, the leadership of Ukraine likes to play act that they are actual legitimate goose-stepping Nazis, which is kind of too deep to go into. And so what Putin did is he just said, hey, these guys are Nazis, and everybody is supposed to hate Nazis, right? And no one could figure out what end was up after he said that, because it's like, well, we're the ones that get to decide who is a Nazi. It's like, well, no, a Nazi is this particular definition, and doesn't that person fit that definition? You see the revolution eating its own when, well, who was that lady? There was somebody that was just canceled. Oh, Whoopi Goldberg, right? Was canceled from The View. How do I even know this, right? Because she was.
I think she came back, but yeah, she was suspended
She
for a
did
while.
because it wasn't a deliberate misstep.
What statement did she say though?
She said that the Holocaust was just people committing violence against other people, which is not false. But she did not give the Jews their due diligence and correctly assign the blessed 6 million number. She didn't say the right key words, and so it's a mortal sin.
The key
she
words
minimized the Holocaust by not propping it up in its unique seriousness and evil that it holds among all other human events in history.
Right, and that's what the enemy's rule book is, that Holocaustianity must be. Thank you, Chip. Says a thing between white people. Yeah, that was the really funny thing. It's like that set the Rees off, because it's like, are they white? Are they not white? They don't say they're white, but then they say they're white. Thank you. Sorry about that. And so so she violated the rule book, and the revolution sort of devoured her. You see the same thing with J.K. Rowling, right? Who's like writes all these characters.
The author of Harry Potter
of Harry Potter, right? And she, of course, none of these characters are actually gay. But then she feels the pressure to be a good liberal and say, oh yes, I say that the wizard is gay, the old wizard. Nobody knows his name. Perhaps it's Dumbledore, perhaps it's Gandalf. Nobody really knows. They're really copies of each other. And so then now all of a sudden, magically, he's gay. And she feels very good about herself and goes skipping off making her millions because she's a good revolutionary who likes to destroy the cultural artifacts that she herself crafted. And then people came and said, well, if there's gay people, why aren't there transgender people? And she said, well, I don't know. That's really stupid. That's not a thing. That's taking away power from women. And I'm a feminist. And they went, wee! And all of a sudden she's up on the gibbet, swinging from the neck until dead. And, and that's what this is.
It was. They straight up lynched her and canceled her. And it was hilarious.
Yeah. She's like a right-wing reactionary now, as if you were to read it in the media. And all she says is consistently, no, I think that women have an important part to play in literature and real society. I just can't not think that, which is a pretty normal thing to say. And so when you have this group, a revolution will always get continuously more extreme. We saw this with the Jacobins, and that's what the enemies of the Jacobins did, is they just made the revolution eat its own by following their own book of increasingly insane little things that they needed to do to be a good revolutionary still. Number 5 here, ridicule is a man's most potent weapon. There is no defense. It is almost impossible to counterattack ridicule. And, he also says it infuriates the opposition who then react to your advantage. I personally, although I agree with a lot of these things as useful in 4G warfare, cultural and otherwise, I think this one is wrong. Because if you look at the whole RK selection hypothesis that says that basically there's 2 different theories, if you're not familiar with it, 2 different theories of resource competition. One is to breed and collectivize, and the other is to be an independent operator. Okay, the example is like a rabbit with a warren and the lone wolf. Okay, and so a lone wolf is not at all susceptible to ridicule. Not at all. You can talk about sigma males, you can talk about alpha males, you can talk about deltas who have their own little tribe. There's no ridicule because sticks and stones can actually not hurt your bones. But they can if you're an R-selected leftist cretin. And
I would say that majority of people, because of the nature of our selection, that majority of people in society are selected people, and you could see this just by like, government says you should wear a mask, and then majority of people go, their NPC programming just switches over, and they go, yep, mask. And because most people comply, most people go with the flow, and that's just and this is the Ash conformity experiment, on display.
It is. The whole mask thing is literally Ash experiment seen over a global scale. If you don't know the Ash experiment, look it up, people. It's you're living in it.
Yes, and so the point is that because most people are selected, and ridicule is most effective against our selected people, and the reason behind that is their survival is dependent on their association with the collective, so they cannot afford to be on the outside of that collective. So if they are being insulted, it's because they have done something that theoretically is socially unacceptable, and they cannot afford to do anything that's socially unacceptable because they won't survive. So that's why ridicule is so effective, and majority of people are susceptible to that. So it's true, especially among the left, which is it's a double-edged sword, because not only do they collectivize a lot harder and use their collective, I guess, insults to bludgeon people, just their enemies, whether that's, oh, you're a racist, you're an anti-Semite. People often shake their heads like, why do they just accuse, like, they don't even need to make arguments anymore. They just throw these things out and they are automatically winning. It's true, because most of the people that they're arguing with are still susceptible to, recoil. No, I'm not a racist. I'm not anti-Semitic. Let me prove to you. I'll go donate all my money to BLM. And that's like, okay, cool. You just kind of are playing right in their hands. But at the end of the day, the point is that most people are susceptible to this, but the left is especially susceptible to this because there is nobody who is more R-selected, and there is no group of people that are more dependent on the group for their survival than people on the left. And so it's almost like social guerrilla warfare. If you're on an airplane, or if you're in a restaurant, and some lefty who thinks that they're on the quote unquote right side of history tells you to put your mask above your nose, and you're just like, you know what, and you take your mask off and you call them an idiot for following along with it, they are immediately going to look around, try to pull out their cell phone, start rallying their little troops to basically socially bully you into conformity. If that doesn't happen, or if you even have like little sleeper cells around with you where people who, and it could be anyone, like a manager on a power trip, kicks you out for not wearing a mask or whatever, and you just have one other person say, come up to the manager, hey man, why are you being such a dick to this person? They're just trying to do their shopping. And all of a sudden, it's amazing watching the life drain from their eyes and the color leave their flesh. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, I don't have a monopoly on morality in this instance. I'm outnumbered. It's only 2 people, but immediately they start shaking in their boots, and it's like, oh my God, I'm alone. It's like this fear of isolation. It's like an ant being separated from their colony. Like, they're going to die, And so it's that level of, and so it's amazing how quickly you can turn the tide when this person realizes that they're alone. And again, you could do this sort of social guerrilla warfare where you're basically isolating these people, and you manage to have your group. There's nothing more dangerous than a pack of wolves. You can have the lone wolf, but if you have your pack with you, you can take down pretty much anything. And so you just isolate the ones, and you can potentially get your way in a lot of instances. But that's how I see number 5 is it's true. Most people are selected, and so ridicule is effective. But it works both ways, and it's most effective against the most are selected people, which happen to be leftists. You just need to kind of pick your battles.
Beautiful. I couldn't have said it better myself. Number 6, a good tactic is one your people enjoy. I mean, that seems pretty straightforward, but it gets to the essence of morale being the backbone of a successful effort. And so don't waste your time on something that your people don't enjoy. So I don't know, it's so self-evident.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you're like, if you want to move it into warfare itself, like if you're mountain people, don't move onto the plains to fight. If you're, used to fighting in the winter, don't wait until the summer to launch your attack or whatever. Basically enjoy the fight.
Yeah, and not only that, but people will do it voluntarily. If it's something they enjoy, you don't need to like rally the troops or convince people. It's just like something that they want to do themselves, and that's how this COVID thing has worked. Where it's like they get off to the idea of being able to bully people who would otherwise be bullying them, and it's because they have the weight and force and authority of the state behind them, so that they can now just walk around and put their finger in people's chest. You need to put your mask on. You need to show me your backs pass X, Y, and Z. And what are you gonna do? Because like at the end of the day, the cops might come and kill you over that. But they love that, and so there's more of them. Everybody is their own little Gestapo, or whatever the USSR equivalent was, where it's like your brother. People began policing each other harder than the state ever did.
Mm-hmm. I think too. When we go back to R and K selection, Northern European, Western European, I should say, not necessarily Northern, are very R selected or K selected, and so they don't get enjoyment out of collectively attacking somebody. You don't see that the same way, and so that's one reason I think that we on the right lose a lot of our battles in this way, is because what we really enjoy is being K-selected, minding our own business and going out and building a cabin in the woods, or building our own family in the quiet of our own home, or, that kind of stuff. And so the tactics that we enjoy are not tactics which are good at taking over and subverting a civilization from the inside. And that's where we really have to think, okay, how are we going to make this happen? And sort of overcome that. And that's where, you'd wondered like, well, how much of the enemy do you become? Well, in using their tactics, you don't really want to, but you have to find something that your people enjoy. And what do we enjoy? We enjoy going out on our own. We enjoy doing our own thing. And that's like, for example, what the truckers are doing in Canada. When they found out that they couldn't petition their government for a redress of grievances, they all just said, okay, I'm going to go home and be with my family. I enjoy that. And all the other truckers who didn't show up to Ottawa, who were the vast majority of truckers in Canada, said, that's a good tactic. Let's just have a general strike. And that was when they won. I don't know if that's a perfect metaphor, but it seems apt. Speaking of, as we go into our second hour, a tactic that drags on too long becomes a drag. And we thank you, viewers, that are watching. We know we get a lot more people on replay than on live, but we do appreciate you, and we hope that we're not dragging on too long. But this is why Conservatism Inc. completely fails, because they keep banging on the Dems are the real racist. Ben Shapiro destroys leftist professor, and just keep saying the same stuff. Oh, what's that?
Socialism sucks.
Oh yeah, yeah. Nazis were socialists too. Barack Obama is his birth certificate. Whatever this kind of stuff. It's just like the tactic drags on, and it becomes a drag. Number 8 says keep the pressure on.
This is true. This is the trucker. This is you holding the line. This is you not accepting the crumbs that they throw at you because you happen to inconvenience them. This is you like not giving up until you get what you want.
Completely,
it's hard
yeah,
to do that. Yeah,
yeah.
keep the pressure on.
And as we see here, the threat is usually more terrifying than the thing itself. The truckers, you can see this with the truckers in not California. Well, I guess it starts in California and goes to DC. They're absolutely shaking in their boots about the fact that we might have a trucker rally in America, and they haven't even really started yet. I think when did they start? They start the 28th or something.
The
I don't remember.
23rd, I think, actually.
Oh, did they
I
start
think they
already?
started. Yeah, so they're already
Mhm.
rolling, but they're not
Oh,
even halfway across the country yet.
and we saw
But the National
before.
Guard's already mobilizing.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's that more terror. I mean, the thing itself is not terrifying. A bunch of truckers showing up to stop at the local Flying J, is not really all that terrifying. But the threat of people rising up in mass, or people that are normally compliant, not complying anymore, is absolutely terrifying. This is, we see this again. I don't know any white nationalist terrorists, and you don't know any white nationalist terrorists, and Miss Cherie doesn't know any white nationalist terrorists. But the FBI, the primary, law enforcement organization of the United States, is convinced that there are white nationalist terrorists under every single rock. Well, when we look on the news, we see, well, there are black nationalist terrorists, there are Islamic terrorists, there are environmental eco-terrorists, there's lone wolf nutjob terrorists, there's school shooters, there's all this kind of stuff. But what they're really terrified of is white nationalist terrorists. And just that threat of those people even existing, which no one is even sure that they do, is more terrifying than the prospect of actual terrorism even occurring on their own watch. So it's absolutely true. All you need to do is create a phantom threat, a phantom menace, as it were, for all of you Star Wars fans out there, and then people will just run to the other side. We have a great threat that's more terrifying than the thing itself right now. It's called Putin. Everyone's scared to death of Russia, Russia, Russia. Putin, Putin, Putin. He's the new Hitler. Well, what has he actually done? Well, I think he stopped Georgia from goofing around one time. I think that he took some Russian territory back here and there. And I think that he prevented NATO from spreading further eastward. That's all. Oh, and he tried to sell a bunch of oil to everyone, the bastard. Yeah. So,
I think the greatest utility of this number 9 piece might not be on such a grand scale. I think this is actually the most effective on like a individual level. You to your manager or something like that. You haven't even talked to anyone. You just walk in your manager's office and something along the lines of, "Hey, me and everyone else have been talking. You need to drop the mask mandate, or we're going to like walk out, or we're going to like." I don't know what other peaceful options you would have under those circumstances, but I've even heard, or I'm going to sue you. Just that alone, and it's like, well, I don't know if he's bluffing or not, but a lot of the times, because people have never even been confronted on these issues in the first place, when someone finally does, they get scared pretty quick. Because most people usually do just go along with figures of authority, and so the one time someone's like, no, actually, you're going to hear from my lawyer, then the dynamic changes very quick, and they go, oh, hold on, we don't need to go that far. And I've even seen that in my line of work, where you're going to have to wear a mask, you're going to have to ROM for 15 days. It's like, all right, you know what? I'm getting a lawyer, and this is like I'm basically serving you a cease and desist letter of like, this is my grievance. I want you to stop, and this is what I'm going to do as a result. And it's like, oh, well, hold on, we don't actually need to do this. So I think people, there's a lot of options that people have for solving problems, with this sort of threat that's more terrifying than the thing itself.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd be amazed that, you know, how shaky people's ground is that they stand on, and how much they fear even the slightest just resistance. I mean, I don't have plenty of good examples, but I know that generally that's the case, and people are very conflict averse. And so, as soon as you know, don't budge when they try to push you in a direction, and you even threaten something like, "I'm going to film this." If you just walk in with your phone on and you say, "I'm going to film this," you're forcing everyone to wear a mask, and it sucks, and it's adverse to my health. I'm going to film this and put it on the internet. I'm going to get you fired, and I'm going to tag Walmart CEO in it or something like that. It's like just an email, you know, a single email from someone into an HR or PR department's inbox. It's amazing what that can do, and so people will respond to these kind of things, but they're mostly expecting you not to voice any discontent at all in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree, 100%. Number 10, it seems like a rehash of number 8. It ends with maintain a constant pressure upon the opposition. That's what number 8 says. It starts out with the major premise for tactics is the development of operations that will maintain a constant pressure. That just seems like a college professor trying to develop some sort of nexus of the tactical, the operational, and the strategic. And it comes off kind of clunky to me. But if someone can make sense of that, that's great. I think that this is primarily useful for a top-down sort of operation. But the essence of it is keep constant pressure on the opposition. You know, don't give up. Every time you go in, you know, give them crap about the mask thing. I don't know how that's going stateside. I'm on a remote tropical island, volcanic fortress island, trying to separate myself from the world and plot its demise. But I hear that stateside and other places like merry old England, they're pretty forceful on that. And if you just say, no, I'm not going to do that, then now the burden falls on them to force compliance, like you were saying, with the threat of, is it harder for them to just let you walk around without a mask because who really cares anyway? Or is it easier for them to call the manager, get everyone involved, possibly face a lawyer? Now they're on the internet. Just keep up the constant pressure. And eventually they will cave, because it's harder to be an authoritarian butthead than it is to just let people do what they're going to do.
Well, I think the mask, go to say the mask is slipping, because I know back stateside that a lot of schools have dropped the mask requirement.
And that's very good news. And I think we're starting to see that. It's so dumb. I can't even begin. I'm all for people wearing masks when they want to wear masks. I have worn masks for years whenever I fly on international flights, because I don't want to be breathing in other people's stuff. And if I have something, I don't want to breathe it to them in a small contained area for long periods of time. But, I don't keep it on because the Gestapo at the end of the terminal will beat me if I take it off. It's like, that's just, I don't know how you people in Australia have put up with that. I don't know. I really don't know. But okay, before I get crazy, let's talk about number 11. If you push a negative hard and deep enough, ooh, that sounds sexy, it will break through to its counter side. This is based on the principle that every positive has a negative. And that just seems like a really fancy way of saying inversion, right? Invert the enemy's negatives into your positives, and invert their positives into negatives, right? I think the word white privilege is a good example of this, right? White people have over the millennia built up very strong, highly resilient, technologically successful, and economically broad nations. And that has given the people who have inherited that, whether they're white or not, a better life than other people in other parts of the world. And they call that white privilege and make it a bad thing. Well, that's inversion. Okay, that's taking a positive and turning it into a negative by pushing it hard enough. And it's just inversion. And the left, especially, and our selected people are very good at inversion because that's how they think, because they're inherently corruptors. They corrupt things. They aren't really good at building stuff. And so what they are good at doing is taking something that's already created, whether that's a negative or whether that's a positive, and turning it on its head. They're very crafty folk. But it has its uses, being able to invert their narratives as well, where you can say diversity is our strength. It's like, oh, okay, so what should we do? Everybody should, be like on TV, and all the white girls should marry the black guys. And it's like, well, then everybody would be the same race, half black, half white, and then there wouldn't be any diversity. And then we wouldn't have strength anymore, right? And so you just take all of their logic to its final destination, and you'll find that pushed hard enough, you will find the counter side of their arguments. Any thoughts on that before we move on?
It's the same thing with feminism, where it's like we should basically women can be men, and men and women are indistinguishable, and women can do everything a man can do. And they basically blur the lines between men and women to the point where they try to make them indistinguishable. And then it's almost like the J.K. Rowling thing, where it's like, okay, yeah, but women are unique and they are their own separate thing. And there are differences between men and women. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. We're saying that men and women are interchangeable and a woman can do anything a man can do, while simultaneously holding the belief that women are unique and, valuable in their own way. So, that is another opportunity for something that they see as a positive to be flipped back onto them.
Awesome. Number 12. Number 12, just I've read it a bunch of times. I don't understand it. I think it's just academic professorial doublespeak gobbledygook. But it says the price of a successful attack is a constructive alternative. It sounds like a sentence that's not even half finished, or an idea. And I have no idea, frankly, what it means. I'm sure there's something useful in there. Can any of you guys pull something out?
If I were to guess, it would basically just be like, if you're gonna pull a statue down, have a different statue to put up in its wake, I guess.
That's good. I like it. And that's one thing that these mediocrities have not actually done, because they don't have the balls. They're going to tear down Robert E. Lee statues, but I haven't seen them putting up any Harriet Tubman statues.
Well, I mean, they were going to melt it down and put it in a Black History Museum. So I'd say that's effectively the same thing. They had a successful attack on the statue, and then they had a plan to follow up on, the fruits of their labors in that instance. So, constructive alternative. We're not going to have Robert E. Lee. We're going to have BLM museums. It's like, we're not going to have 4th of July. We're going to have Juneteenth. You know
how in the Soviet Union, when the communists took over and they turned like churches, Orthodox churches, Catholic churches, into stables for horses, and like manure storage depots and stuff, specifically to do that. I really look forward to the day when BLM, and dare I even say the all too ubiquitous Holocaust museums, are sort of turned into stables. I think that maybe someday that'll happen. But these secular churches, as Michael McEntee was talking about secular heresies, I just spoke a secular heresy, and we need to have our own constructive alternatives too, I guess. I have plans for that George Floyd statue that sits there, and maybe making a Robert E. Lee statue out of it when it's melted down. I don't know. Nobody's asked me. Shall we go on to number 13? Number 13 is the most famous one. It's the one everyone's heard as we draw this program to a close. Pick the target, freeze the target, personalize it, and polarize it. And this one is brilliant because it personalizes the enemy, which is the thing that our selected people do not want. No rabbit wants a spotlight on them. Right. If you think about it, like a wolf or a dog chasing a pack of rabbits or antelope or something that you see on the Wildlife Channel, they aren't too concerned. All these antelope are just sort of sitting there while this lion is walking in the midst of them, because they know it's probably not going to be me. But the second that that lion turns on one particular antelope or one particular rabbit, oh my gosh, like the fear of that animal is like palpable, because none of the other tribe is going to help it out. None of the other pack is going to come to its aid. And, when I was reading this, one of the things I was thinking of, there's a writer and sort of an economic guru type guy. And one of the things he always writes, and I think it's hilarious, he never writes the word Biden or President Biden or Joe Biden. Never. All he ever calls the guy is Hunter Biden's dad. Hunter Biden's dad said this in a speech. Hunter Biden's dad did this, in Washington, D.C. And it's a perfect example of number 13, because it's highlighting, this is the scumbag that's the corrupt dad of this other disgusting, corrupt scumbag. And it highlights that whole thing. And it doesn't give any respect to any of them. But it polarizes, it personalizes, it freezes Hunter Biden's acts in situ, as they say, and points at it for all the world to see, like a rabbit in the headlights. And I love it. It's even too brilliant, for me. I can't just call him Hunter Biden's dad, although maybe we can start doing that on the channel. What do you guys think about this most famous of the rules for radicals?
I just look at it and I think, man, the left does this so much more effectively than people on the right. It's like, it seems like everything that they do revolves around this, and things that were like totally irrelevant, in 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or whatever, because they just continue to hammer away at it incessantly. Like, we continue to hand wave about like transgender things, like, oh, what was going to happen? They're going to pretend to be what they're going to play in sports or whatever, and they're going to do X, Y, and Z. And the whole thing was so ludicrous like 5 years ago. And now it's just like, yeah, man, you don't know if the person in the women's restroom in the stall next to you is standing while they take a piss. It's like they do this so effectively, and I think we can too. And I think we can do it effectively, mostly in a moral standpoint, because we have the objective moral high ground. So you can really appeal to people's nature and their natural moral sense, where it's like, actually, I think a man is a man and a woman is a woman. I think there are actually differences between the races. I think, things that any rational person can just look around.
Remember to personalize it, though.
Yeah.
Bruce Jenner is a degenerate, loser because he did X, Y, and Z, right? That cretin for the, I don't know what it was. What was it, like Northwestern swim team that runs around swinging its package at the girls' swim meet is a degenerate scumbag.
Yeah.
And it's like, you have to personalize it, and we don't want to do that. I mean, we're reluctant to do that because it's largely irrelevant to K-selected people. It's like, who cares about it? It's just one stupid rabbit. But if you can cause the fear in the one rabbit, it will spread throughout the herd, so to speak. And I know rabbits don't go in herds, but that
two things that I thought of with this last point. One of them is abortion. That is definitely a very it's already polarized. That's one area where the right does a good job. I think they've hyper focused on, and it's literally only the Catholic Church that's kind of fomenting this among the right, whether they realize it or not. If the Catholic Church didn't exist, then everyone would be on board with this. But that's something. It's a target that people are hyper focused on. They continue to make it relevant, through the March for Life. And you always got those dudes who show up on college campuses with just picked apart fetuses on a big placard, and they get to show it in people's faces, and people turn away in disgust because it is disgusting, and they're forced to look in a mirror, essentially. And so they constantly make this issue known. They personalize it. There's personal testimonials. People often, the most, I don't want to say rabid, but enthusiastic pro-lifers are the ones who were either potentially victims and survived, or perpetrators who saw the error in their ways. And then you polarize it. And this is, again, one of the most effective ways, because on one end you have it's a human right. And on the other hand, you have it's infanticide, and you're killing the most innocent among us. It's literal murder. And so I think that is one extremely effective avenue that embodies this point for people on the right. The other one is something like the quote unquote refugee crisis, really just our current open borders policy. You can, hit every element of that 13th point there. And I think the personalized piece is extremely effective, because you can go to a political rally or a Democrat or something and say, like, hey, those 100,000 Afghan quote unquote refugees that you just imported across the entire world into America. This is the name and the face of a girl who was raped by one of those. Like, what do you say to their parents that you supported these people coming into our country? Or same thing with anyone across the southern border. And it's extremely polar, because they say, like, oh, these people need our help, blah, blah, blah. And then on the other hand, you're saying that to people whose sons and daughters are being raped and murdered by these people who they're welcoming in. So it's extremely polarizing, and it's one of the ways that this 13th point can really be hammered home for people on the right. One in abortion and one in this kind of mass immigration, because it really strikes a chord with every single one of those elements of that 13th point.
Ms. Cherie?
When you brought up the swimmer, the tranny swimmer, I was just thinking that I look forward to the day, and I think it's coming, or it's just about here, where, if you're listening and, it's you or somebody you love, like a niece or a daughter or sister, if that happens to them, they have the unfortunate incident of a tranny coming on their all-girls team. If you can get them and other teammates to strike, or, they're not going to participate, I would hope that would make the school, listen and be like, okay, maybe this isn't the best course of action, because now we don't have a team anymore. We just have this one person, and they can't do all the events.
Well, to be honest, one girl in a handball or a basketball team, or one guy pretending to be a girl, could probably beat an entire girls' team. So it might not be as good. No, but I understand the point. And yeah, but the thing is, okay, women are even more selected than men, and they all want to be accepted, and they all want to be seen as good thinkers. And so it would take an exceptionally strong girl, or an exceptionally strong group of girls, or an exceptionally strong family pressure to get them to say, you know what, no, we're all walking off the team. But you're absolutely right. That's a good
when it costs
example.
them a scholarship, wouldn't that be enough?
Well, it would cost the kid a scholarship. Yeah. And that's why they wouldn't want to do it. I think that we're going to wrap up our stream here. Any final thoughts, Ms. Cherie?
I just pray that the whole conflict with Ukraine will end sooner rather than later.
I agree completely. Mr. Templar?
Don't get comfortable with where you're at. There's greatness that's out there. We just need to find the willpower to go get it. And that means turning off your TV, putting your phone down, and thinking about the opportunities for acceleration that you can capitalize on. Also assuming that you've already done your prep work, so that when chaos follows the opportunity, that you're able to capitalize on that in and of itself. But don't accept your current state. It can be better, and so pursue that. And if you're gonna punch the king, make sure you kill him. That's not a call for violence.
That's a metaphorical statement.
Totally metaphorical.
Defensively, Susan.
Defensively. So that is our broadcast for today. We've been talking about acceleration and what it is, how it works, and how we might even use some of the tactics from the left to, now that we are in the position of being an underdog. Michael McEntee, thanks for joining us. Chip, thanks for joining us. Mr. Brown, we appreciate all of our viewers, whether they're listening live or whether they're watching on the restream. As Chip said, this evening has been a thing between white people. We hope to continue for it to be a thing between white people. And for Miss Cherie and for Templar, this is Commander Culture saying tomorrow belongs to you, to the stars.